Hey everybody, welcome to PopWire. My name is Danny. Today we are joined with actor Ess Hödlmoser from Freeform's supernatural drama series, Motherland, Fort Salem, now streaming on Hulu.
Hello, S. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. So before we dive into the world of Motherland Fort Salem, I just want to point out that you are such a talented artist. You have your hands in so many different medias, from acting to writing, performance art. You're a contortionist, an aerial performer. My first question to you is, how do you stay so inspired and involved in all of these different media art forms?
Thanks for that question. I'm sure there's a couple different ways I could try to answer it, but I think one of the biggest ways that I stay inspired and motivated to keep pursuing the different goals I've set for myself in all those different avenues has to be the artists around me. Acting isn't particularly interesting if it's always in a vacuum. And that's obviously not the case on Motherland Fort Salem, which has a big, beautiful ensemble cast. And circus training isn't so different, whether I'm doing it in Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal or San Francisco. You're always surrounded by artists who are working towards absolutely impossible seeming goals, who are where you want to be, who are where you were a year ago. And the same is for writing. I'm always looking around me for little bits and pieces to inspire the next big push or the next project or just the next day of training.
That's incredible. Yeah. So you are inspired by who you surround yourself with, the world around you. I was actually just talking to a friend yesterday, and it was part of a topic of conversation that we are actually, surrounded by art and poetry all the time. As long as you keep your eyes open to it, you'll find it. And yeah, so it's awesome that you find inspiration from your environment.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Are you currently working on any projects that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Do you mean in general? Or are
In
you
general,
talking
yeah.
about TV land? Okay, yeah. Obviously Motherland Fort Salem is still shooting, so that's ongoing. Uh, that would be the biggest thing on my plate right now, I'd say. But I've just started work on a writing project through the Toronto Arts Council. I won a small grant to complete work on a manuscript about a really important circus festival that I had the opportunity to attend and compete in was it 2018 or 2019? In any case, it was this massive opportunity. The festival's called Cirque de Demain, and it's one of the most important festivals in contemporary circus in the world right now. It was a very unlikely situation that led to me being able to go perform there at all. It was with a duo act with my friend Troy James, who I met actually as a stunt performer. We were both like creatures on this Del Toro TV show called The Strain. So like we met like covered
Oh,
in full
wow.
prosthetics, like both being creepy creatures, being like, "Oh, so what do you do the rest of the time?" Anyways, I don't believe there had been any artists who had ever gone to that festival from Toronto before. It's I remember this festival being described to me by another acrobat in Toronto as like the Super Bowl and the Olympics of circus rolled into one, but French. And it was an absolutely Olympian mountain to climb just to get something prepared to get there. And it's a really good story. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to write that out in full. I've got all my index cards ready to go and putting the hours in, sitting here at my computer every day, just like punching out the word count. And I don't expect it will be done soon, but working on at least the first copy of the manuscript is probably going to take me through to early summer. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
That is awesome. Congratulations on receiving that grant.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to
Yeah.
reading it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was super stoked to get a writing grant. I was like, oh, who, me? You like it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so cool. All right. Well, shall we get into Motherland?
Let's do it. Let's get into it.
Okay. So, in season 2 of Freeform's Motherland Fort Salem, the character that you play, M, is introduced as the commanding officer of the Sekhmet Company in War College, in which Abigail, Tally, and Raelle are assigned to. What can you tell us about the character that you play?
M is this casually confident leader with a very dry sense of humor who takes zero shit but is very protective of the unit. And I think we see that shining through in those moments that we do get to see M on screen interacting with our beloved unit. They're either smirking, making extended eye contact, or literally kicking ass. And I think that sums up the character, albeit in very few words, not badly.
So when you learned about the role of M, was there something special about the character that kind of drew you in that made you want to pursue?
This is one of the, I would say this is, yeah, one of the first major acting roles I've ever landed. So I'm a pretty new actor in the grand scheme of things. My career history in the film and television industry was predominantly through stunts. So I worked as a stunt performer, as a stunt double, and sometimes a stunt actor, which is a funny little category where you have to say a line, that's the actor part, and then you get kicked down the stairs. So special
Gotcha.
category. I did that sometimes, but acting, just acting, not getting hit by cars, not throwing off buildings, not falling down the stairs. That was new. And Motherland's audition request for the role of M came in on the heels of the only other big acting job I'd ever gotten, which was playing a character named Cindy in season 2 of The Boys. So when I got the audition request, I'm fully just in like, okay, this is the next one. I'm gonna do my best, and we'll see if it comes back. And if it doesn't, that's all right. We'll do the next one. A lot of the actors that I know, like their agents are gonna send them stuff that's suited to their character or their acting type or their look or whatever. And I don't know if other people do it differently, but I certainly don't question it. I'm like, okay, we're reading this one next. So I was nonetheless excited when I saw the audition request for M, because it was a character description that was explicitly written as non-binary, and they wanted to cast an actor that identified accordingly. I think this is a trend that's increasing in the industry, although there's a long way to go with that still. But it was and remains something that feels really good to me to have an opportunity to try to represent those characters on screen. In part because it's such a departure from working as a stunt performer, where the whole point is if you see me and recognize me, then we've all done something wrong in our jobs. You're not supposed to notice it's me. You're supposed to think that it's the star of the show falling down the stairs or getting hit by the car. So it's a little bit more anonymous, if that makes sense. I can count on one hand with several fingers left over the number of times I played a gender neutral character for stunts, like not named or anything like that, but like predominantly the work is doubling actors. So seeing something like the character of M come along, it's exciting just in terms of representation and having the opportunity to try to do that justice, even if it's just in the audition. But in my case, it ended up going past the audition. Lucky me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So on that topic of representation, which is so important, right, especially in media, Motherland has been renewed for a third and final season. And when that news surfaced, we saw this huge outcry by the Motherland fandom, or as we like to call ourselves, the switches, right? And not only was there a huge outcry of disappointment, there's also been this very large rallying behind the series to try to save it. I think Motherland has been remarkable in terms of giving the show's diverse fan base visibility and empowering representation of racially diverse women, the LGBTQIA+ community, and other marginalized communities. So when you talk about being a non-binary individual playing a non-binary character, why is it important for us to have characters like M on mainstream television?
I think it's important to see characters like M on our screens because it really wasn't that long ago that there was absolutely zero examples of it anywhere. And it's easy to forget that in the rapid pace at which we both produce and consume our media entertainment. I am not that old, but when I was growing up, there was absolutely zero examples for me to look at, let alone look up to, in terms of expansive gender identity. And uh, like, let me think. I think I knew that trans women existed. I somehow didn't know that trans men existed. Don't ask me to make that make sense. I don't know. I didn't see it. So I was like, I guess it doesn't happen that way. I don't know. Obviously, that's not true. And then I think that, and this is caught up in the push for political and social and medical rights of transgender individuals and gender expansive individuals. But I think at the time that I was a teenager and a young adult, like my early 20s, there was a much stronger narrative happening in the media and in healthcare about transness or gender expansiveness being something that was pathologized and medicalized. So it's not that long ago that being gay was in the DSM as a disease. It was pathologized and then it was taken out. And then it wasn't that long ago that like being trans was also in that. It changed names a few times. It turned into gender identity disorder before it was removed completely by the World Health Organization quite recently, like very recently, within the last few years. So it's all so new. Like it's all so new. And I think in the communities, especially for people who like watching a show like Motherland, a lot of us have a trans person in our lives that we love or that we know, or we've questioned our gender ourselves, or we can at least pick up our phones and access someone like that on TikTok or on Instagram. But I didn't have that growing up, and it was really hard and it was really confusing. And I spent many, many years in a significant amount of mental and emotional distress because I was like, well, the only thing I can see out there is trans men. By the time I was like 20, I'm like, is that what I am? I knew that I'd wanted top surgery for a very long time, but I didn't see any dialogue happening about people who wanted gender affirming surgeries outside of very rigid notions of gender binary. Even now, I'm starting to see conversations about like cis women who are lesbians who want top surgery just because that's what they want to feel better in their bodies, and it's completely valid. So finally, these discourses around embodying ourselves in ways that feel affirming and positive and like home are moving outside of very rigid, pathologized medical understandings of the human condition. But it's new. And being able to see something like that in a character like M on a show like Motherland Fort Salem is nothing short of remarkable and important. And I firmly believe that is the case for any gender expansive character that we see on TV right now.
Absolutely. I totally agree. When I was younger, when I was a teenager and I was discovering my own sexuality, I was growing up in a very like conservative, openly homophobic community. And so much so that I was even afraid to come out to my best friends, you know, people that I had grown up with, and because I was worried about how they would see me and, you know, whether or not they would reject me. And so I found myself turning to film as a way to find that community. I would go to the local video rental store, and I would rent all of these like little indie films that had just like even the tiny bits of like queerness that I could find. And it was so important for me. Yeah, exactly. It was so important for me to have that, you know, because that's where I found like a home within the home that I had. So yeah, it makes me so happy to see all of our communities within the LGBTQ community get some visibility. And like you said, we have so much more work to do, but sometimes it takes baby steps. And yeah, so I'm very excited, and I'm super excited to have you representing the non-binary community. I think that's so awesome because you are such a big advocate for all of those things. Last summer, you had posted something about your experience with the wardrobe team, which I thought was so cool to read about that. So can you tell us what happened with the wardrobe team?
For those of you who aren't doing deep dives into my Instagram feed, I posted a photo of M's dress uniform. So like the really nice blue outfits that we wear on the show when there's like an important event happening with the sash across the front. And the sashes all have little like badges and medals and awards and charms and stuff. And people were super curious about what that was. But before I get to that, my experience with the Motherland costume designers and wardrobe team in general has been one of the most positive I've had so far in the industry. Uh, Before I even went out to Vancouver for the show, I was contacted and they sent me a bunch of mock-up drawings of different kinds of standard uniform, and they were like, which one feels best for you? We have women's uniforms and they look like this, and the detailings are X, Y, and Z, and we have the men's uniforms that look like that, and the detailings are X, Y, and Z, but we want your feedback on it. And I ended up diving into this like massive like info dump email thread because I was like, oh no, like I really hope the show isn't like laboring under some misconception that non-binary people are just like in the middle, which is it's super common. And I also happen to be androgynous presenting a lot of the time, which I know is another misconception about non-binary people. And so right away I was like on high alert before I got on the show. I was like, yeah, I got the job. And then I was like, oh no, it can go wrong in so many ways. But my fears were not needed. The entire wardrobe team read my reams of emails and were like, yes, we're on the same page. It's all good. Like, tell us what makes sense for you. And I won't get into it too much, but thinking about how someone like M would have ended up in the position that they're in a world like Motherland Fort Salem, where it's a very matriarchal power structure, where those power structures are divided along very binary gender roles. We ended up mixing and matching from both wardrobe pieces in terms of the like which side fastens, where the pockets are, the angle of the bottom of the hem, the sleeves, like everything was unique for this character. And I imagine that would be the case for any other non-binary or gender variant characters we would see cropping up in the show if we could have our millions of spin-offs that we all want, because it's such a rich world that the writers created on this show. If you're talking like from the history and the social customs and the way that magic works into it, like you could take so many pieces of Motherland Fort Salem and just like spin them off into their own shows. But you know, we can only dream. Anyways, the point is that the wardrobe department approached the character of M with the kind of sensitivity and understanding that was novel for me in my early career as an actor. It was really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any other examples you can think of that the Motherland crew has included you in these like big decisions for M?
I can't talk too much more about that, I think, without giving away things I'm not supposed to give away. But this season, I was much more heavily involved in certain conversations about that character and the direction of certain things in the show, which was fantastic. I think I should probably just button it there so I don't make a misstep and say something I shouldn't. But it's been an inclusive process in evolving ways, which I think is very positive.
Yeah, that's great, and that's how it should be, right? Okay. So with that, what would you like to see as a standard for the production of television series or even movies in terms of non-binary representation behind the camera as well as in front of?
I think in front of the camera is going to be unique to whatever actor is in front of the camera, so that's a little harder to pin down. But I strongly think that any production would benefit from having a gender consultant in the writing room or on the production. I think it's novel in the way that intimacy coordinators are kind of a new thing on a lot of productions, although those are, I think ACTRA rules have changed recently, where if an actor requests an intimacy coordinator for a scene where there's physical interaction, they have to hire an intimacy coordinator, which is really important. We will have military consultants come in, Indigenous consultants come in, legal consultants come in, often to writing rooms in order to make sure that the material that's being produced for an episode script is realistic or reflective of the real world. So if you are a doctor or a lawyer or an Indigenous person or whatever kind of consultant has been asked in watching the show, you're not going to go, that's not real. Obviously, they didn't have blank in the writing room. And I think that if you're going to have someone in front of the camera who is transgender, who is non-binary, who is gender expansive, having someone in the writing room or as a consultant so that that actor isn't necessarily the only point of contact and the only avenue of communication for these things between different department heads, between the writers, the directors, the producers. It's super important. And I can see the industry evolving in that way. Yeah, but I think right now it's super new. I have never worked on a show where there has been a gender consultant. And there are many instances where that would have made everyone's jobs much easier and less stressful, because a lot of the times when you're having conversations that revolve around identity or how a character is being developed, who is trans or non-binary or whatever the case may be, there is anxiety from people because people want to get it right. It's coming from a good place, you know? People don't want to misstep, they don't want to misgender, they don't want to write something that is a trope or fetishizing or a stereotype, but it's really hard to know something that is so outside your scope of experience. And that's where consultants can really help. So I hope we see it moving in that direction.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, to have not only accurate but positive representation of someone, you have to have someone to provide that information, you know, and kind of be there while this character is being written or these scenes are being written.
And I think it's not dissimilar, I'd imagine, to the ways that intimacy coordinators make the experience better on set for everyone. Something I never thought about before falling, no pun intended, into acting was that there are power dynamics that I never thought about. As a stunt performer, there's social power dynamics like there isn't any workplace. But my perspective as a stunt person on the sidelines, like waiting to be called in for the action scene and watching the actors work with the producers and the directors and everyone else, I'm kind of like, okay, it's a microcosm that a stunt person isn't a part of until they're called in for that exact moment in the scene, right? So I was just an observer externally, being part of that microcosm. Instead, now on the show, I'm kind of like, ooh, even when everyone's super, super nice, it's really challenging, at least I found personally, to not think about the power imbalances that can exist between like crew members or even actors and people who are executive producers or directors or head writers. And I'm not saying that these people are like intimidating or they're scary or they treat people badly. Like everyone on Motherland is so nice as an example. But when you're having a moment where like suddenly like the figurative camera is pointed at you and you have to speak something that might be a bit disruptive to the process that's been happening because there wasn't a consultant asked, now you're the one who's the messenger. And it's like, well, there's all these other things that you want to do with your day when you go to set. You're like, I have my lines, I got to think about my marks, I got to like talk to my co-stars, all these things. And having a consultant as a conduit between those two parties, it makes everything so much easier. It just kind of like balances the scales a little bit.
Yeah, they kind of serve as like a mediator.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the perfect word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, hopefully we'll start seeing that then. I'm glad that this is, you know, that we're talking about this and kind of getting this out in the ether, because I think that would be a very significant addition to film production.
Yeah, and I mean, Emma's a minor character on Motherland Fort Salem, right? Like the show focuses so heavily on kind of like the bellwether unit, and then we see a lot of General Alder and General Petry, and of course Scylla and Anacostia. So maybe on shows where like your number 1, 2, or 3 is trans or non-binary or gender expansive, that is the case already. But I haven't had that experience yet. We'll see what happens.
Before we move on to the next set of questions, I have a question from actress Genevieve King, who stars on Netflix Lock and Key. Let's take a look at that now.
Hello, my name is Genevieve King from Netflix's Lock and Key, and my PopWire question for you is, if there is one person, dead or alive, that you could have dinner with, who would it be?
Hi, Genevieve. I'm Ess Hödlmoser. If I could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, one of them would have to be a woman named Anna Olga Albertina Brown, otherwise known by her performing name of Miss Lala, who was a famous iron jaw performer in Europe in the late 19th century. I'm a bit of a circus history and sideshow nerd, and I think Miss Lala would be a super cool person to sit in a Parisian cafe and have a coffee with or dinner with. And if you're like, S, that's really random, and how the hell am I supposed to know what you're talking about? Miss Lala was the subject of a really famous Degas painting, which you can Google pretty easily.
All right, so this last set of questions actually came from some fans. We have 3 of them. So the first question, and I will just say that it was hard to pick a question because we had a huge influx. We had about 24 hours where we had this window that fans could send in questions to you, and we got a ton. So
where were y'all asking?
Fans know that I read through all of them. We did it through Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we posted the form up on Twitter, and then the fans had an opportunity to email in what they wanted to ask you.
Right on. I don't use Twitter as much. That would be why. I'm just not good at being concise. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, I totally get it. But the Twitter world is so much fun. I just joined it back in August. I actually joined it because of Motherland. I wanted to be a part of the live feed of the season finale of season 2. Okay. Oh, really?
Well, yeah, because the cast is like, you have to live tweet it. And I'm like, I don't know how. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Like, I love that all of you interact with the fans, like, especially during the episodes. Like, it's just, it's so much fun. And I'm so glad that I joined Twitter, because now I'm just like obsessed with it. I probably on it a little bit too much, but anyways, I digress.
I feel it. Social media.
Yeah. Okay. So first question comes from an individual named Slay. And their question to you is, what is your favorite part about playing M?
Hey, Slay. I think my favorite part about playing M has been the opportunities I've had to blend my previous stunt life with this current acting opportunity I've gotten. I love physical acting, and I love having had the chance to flex some of the martial arts skills I built up over the years through M, and hopefully we'll see more of that in season 3.
Question 2 comes from Alex, and they want to know, what has been your favorite thing about Motherland Fort Salem, about the fans so far?
Hey, Alex, my favorite thing about the Motherland Fort Salem fans actually echoes one of the first things you asked me at the start of this interview, and that's the other artists in the fandom. There's so many talented artists in the Motherland fandom. Like, everyone blows me away with the drawings and like the digital illustrations they come up with. I miss a lot of them because of how Instagram notifications are now, but when I do catch them, I'm like, wow, you did that. It's impressive. It's really impressive. And I know the rest of the cast loves it too. Yeah.
There's also another great reason to be on Twitter, because a lot of it goes on Twitter as well. A lot of the art, I'm just saying. Okay, question 3 is, it comes from Mariana. How would you react if you were to hear that Motherland Fort Salem was picked up by another streaming platform?
Ooh, that's the hot question right now, isn't it, Mariana? Well, I'm 5'9", and long, tall people tend to be pretty bad at ground acrobatics. So if I could chuck a backflip, I would, but I can't. So I'd probably put it out to the fans to do some kind of acrobatic trick within my wheelhouse as a celebratory gesture if it did get picked up by somebody else. I would do a really cool circus trick. Not a backflip, but something cool.
That's very awesome, and I can't wait to see it.
Well, fingers crossed, right?
Yes, knock on wood. Okay, that's it. Ess, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. This has been really fun and enlightening as well. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for the questions and for your time. This was great.